Newsflash, not fake news.
Say something about it, Pete. What do you think?
It was great.
All right, good. Moving on.
Are you okay?
Devil's in the system, guys.
We need to stop and pray. Welcome to the Brook on Canaan Radio. It's good to be in this. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Brand new, live. It's good to be in the studio today. Sometimes we decide to change things, and, you know, I'm not perfect. All right, I'll be the first to admit it.
You really are.
And that's recorded, so
We're going to cut that out. It won't be in the
you really are trying to be a floating head.
Again.
Wearing a black shirt.
Haunted by
Yeah,
William Reed.
I don't know why I didn't think about that. Is my camera in focus?
Yes.
Okay.
he said the only time he gets to wear his colored shirts is out when he goes soul winning.
No, I am not in focus. Am I?
I'm looking at you right now. Yes,
fine
you're
to
in.
me.
I
You
can
look fabulous.
Did you just
son.
say what I think you said, JT?
I mean, actually,
technically you're
Said you look fine to me.
Okay.
you need to get your prescription
Not
checked.
that
Close enough.
definition of fine.
close enough.
It's good. It'll be fine.
There's absolutely nothing normal
good
about this family.
To be together once again. We are ready for Easter Sunday. I'll tell you what. A lot of work has been done, completed.
I forgot. No.
Well, it's like
Never mind. You
that'll
said
be
we're
you.
all
You
ready.
you could stay. You can stay up late and finish. So, yep, it's all good. Brother Peter was finishing up the last few things during practice. It was very, yeah, just like that.
That's
Yeah.
the sound of an impact drill if you're wondering what it is.
What it was
Behind a wall.
Pastor was like, "Hey, fix these things," and Pete's like, "Right now," during.
Yeah. I
During
got other
practice.
stuff
I
to
didn't
do.
say right now.
No, I know. I said Pete was just like, "I got to get him done."
I could have
So he
waited
just-
until
yeah,
Tuesday.
you know.
I should have waited till Sunday morning. In his preaching.
Oh,
during
you
his
don't
preaching.
need this when we're preaching. Right? Wow.
By the way, I forgot to ask, but did you take towels over?
Oh, yeah, everything's over.
I saw
Everything's
I
over
saw the robes and everything, but I didn't recall
They
the
are
towels.
on top.
So
Okay, just checking.
here we are talking about the event to come, but here you are doing business.
I know.
I know.
Having to do with the event to come.
So maybe somebody should share about the event to come.
Yeah, share about the event.
David,
We're looking forward to Easter Sunday.
GT.
Visiting was great today. I'm praying that we have some visitors in church tomorrow. We've got them lined up.
Yeah.
It was actually neat. I was driving over the viaduct, and I looked down and I saw some kids and adults sitting outside of the trailer court, outside of their trailer. So I pulled around, and we've been visiting this guy named Clayton that I'd won to the Lord about a month or so ago, and he's never been home. So pulled in the trailer court, went into his trailer, and he was home. And so he came out, and he's got to go to Gothenburg tomorrow, but he is planning on coming next week, bringing his girlfriend, so that'll be exciting. But right next door, I think it's right next door, maybe a couple doors down, the family that was outside, I went down and I talked to them and invited them. They said they just moved to North Platte, and they didn't have a church they get to go to, so I invited them, told them about the world's greatest peep that we're having on our church bus, and got them all excited about that. So their whole family's planning on coming tomorrow.
Yay.
And then he had a veterans hat on, Army hat, and so I told him about the following week, and both him and his wife have served in the military. So they're planning on coming next week too.
Awesome.
So
That's awesome.
excited about that. Hopefully, got a couple other visitors lined up for tomorrow. So
I've got the ex-manager of Starbucks. When we first got our Starbucks, Sue lined up, and her granddaughter and her aunt.
Oh, how awesome.
So hopefully they'll be here in the morning.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, I've talked to several of the daycare workers, and they have quite a few lined up. So
Yes.
we got to go back out visiting when we're done here because I wasn't even able to finish all of our visits. So
We have service tomorrow, and then Easter egg hunt, and then first pancakes, then the service, then Easter egg hunt. Then our family will have
dinner at our house.
house.
With a little
Then we'll
Easter
have
egg
church.
hunt.
Then we'll have church. Somewhere in between there, we have to pack because me, David, and Buddy or Will, sorry, are all getting in our vehicles and headed out to Parkside Baptist Church in Mesquite, Texas, for the Baptist Leadership Conference.
With the wives?
With the wives, yeah, man. It's a lot better than when we have to go by ourselves.
That's right.
So, and Bud's taking his own car because he's got a screaming kid. So,
She's not that bad.
no, it's going to be a good week.
Yeah.
And I heard the weather's supposed to be nice. So
yeah.
That's exciting.
That's right, Brother Tyson. Everything starts with pancakes.
Yes.
That's right.
Everything's better.
Actually, us guys are going to go out before all that and go see the sunrise.
That's right. I forgot about that.
do that.
I would have
It's
forgot that if you
Easter.
would have mentioned that.
It's
We do it every year.
That's right, we do. We'll be up there, Pastor. Where's Pastor?
My phone ringing.
No, he knows because we're starting at Starbucks.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We'll be there.
That's how we know he won't forget.
But
It's going to be a great first week of our 6-week program. I'm excited about that.
And we're supposed to have a lady baptized.
yes,
Lynette.
in the first baptism in the new auditorium. And we actually have myself, Brother Chet Smith, Brother Peter, and Brother Will all can baptize. So I've been ordained. But I told him I'm doing the first one. I'm doing
It's
the
okay.
first
We'll see
one,
if
so.
those stilts will hold the baptistry up when you get in there.
I'm just curious to see if that lady's going to make it up the stairs.
That is a lot of
Yeah,
stairs.
that's a
lot
steep
of
stairs.
It's like
It's like a ladder.
Jacob's ladder.
You need to put in an acorn stair lift on that. And just keep it
tomorrow.
going right through the
That's
water.
just for Pastor.
and then up
Yeah,
the other side.
there you go.
Just have a conveyor belt baptism service. It's like everybody get on who wants to get baptized. Actually, that was funny. I had a parent today because I was talking to her about her 5-year-old. He had just come to church a few weeks ago, the first time here, and then he accepted Christ as his Savior. So I talked to her about baptism. She was all excited about it. But we were talking to him and trying to convince him, oh, I don't want to do it. So we've got all night to get it. So anyway, they're supposed to come tomorrow, their whole family.
Cool.
So it's going to be a blessing.
Nice.
And if he does want to get it, so he might be joining Lynette. Well, not at the same time.
I understand.
Clarification. But
On the
he might be
conveyor belt.
going up there as number 2 on the conveyor belt, yes. It's like, here, just throw him up
And
in through the front window.
it'll be the first time that we don't have to stand up in the congregation in order to see
be able to
baptism.
see.
That's right.
Oh, that's
All
gonna be
the-
so
ever,
nice.
ever.
Yeah.
All
All the
5
years.
churches.
Yeah.
This is the 5th church I pastored. In all 5 churches, it was like really hard to see any of the baptisms.
'Cause they're
Unless we
always
went to-
behind the pulpit.
Well, when we first went to Brewster, was baptizing on the river.
We could see
Oh,
that.
everybody could see that.
We
Yeah.
could see that.
Hold me.
Hold me firmly.
This old 77-year-old lady, I baptized her. One of the first people I baptized in the river, and I got stuck in the river. I weighed a lot more then, but I got stuck in the river, and she's
You
coming down.
skip the part about why. Did you skip the part about why she said, hold me firmly?
No, I'm just getting to it.
Oh.
So she comes down into the water, and she's old. She's like, hold me
that's right.
firmly. And that's just kind of been a
Then
running-
after she gets
running joke.
baptized, she's trying to help.
Yeah, then they were trying to
cast
pull me
her
out
out.
with they actually lassoed me.
I still remember
so,
that.
But the
to this
reason that
day.
the way that the river, of course, the water is moving and stuff, but
It's
it's like
sand.
it's just
Sand.
sand. So like you stand there long enough, and Dad liked to shift
I
back and
always shift my
forth.
weight
You know,
back
he
and
just
forth.
shifted
He just
his weight
kept
back
going
and forth
down.
and just got deeper and deeper until it's like up to
I
his
didn't know
calves
though,
in sand.
but I didn't know.
That wasn't
yeah.
that wasn't the only baptism we had
we
that day.
we had
it was,
a
it was
Right.
several.
teenage guy,
I think we were waiting on somebody.
We were waiting on
Ian?
the lady. I
Ian.
think.
Ian,
Yeah, Ian.
Ian. Yeah.
had Ian, and then
Yeah, and her. And I just remember because we have this on video somewhere. We still
Somewhere.
have it on video.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they threw a lasso around around Pastor Reeves, and they're pulling, and the lady who just gotten baptized has a towel over her
Come
over
on,
her head. She's
preacher.
like, I got you, preacher. Come on, preacher. She's like trying to same lady who's like, hold me
one of
me
these
firmly.
days, we need to get in the attic, get all those
Oh,
VHS
man.
tapes, and get them all digitized.
It's good.
Yeah,
And just
before they're
put. That'd be so
well,
much
I
fun.
can see why we're talking about this since our subject
Yeah,
matter is
yes.
on handling her.
Handling hurt.
Wasn't it at Easter too?
Yeah,
It was Easter
was it?
Sunday. It was.
Wow, it's an anniversary.
That's right.
Yeah, do man.
All right. Whoever takes the lady up and gets her health prepped, you need to tell her. It's like you need to say loudly
me,
into the
hold me,
microphone.
Hold
Hold
me.
me.
Hold me.
Oh,
hold
that's
me
another
firmly.
thing. This is the first baptistry that we will have had that has
A
a mic.
mic.
So we'll be able to hear them gurgle.
Blah, blah, blah.
I was kind of chuckling since we're piling up on making fun of people. Peter, when he baptized 2 weeks ago, when you were here, he baptized Scott. It's funny. He said, "I baptize you, my brother," and he put him under. And then realized he had to say
And the
the
name of
rest
his
of it.
father.
And so he's like, da-da-da-da-da.
Hey, you know what? I told him.
Oh man,
I was cracking up.
Hold
And
your
he got
breath.
Comes up.
It wasn't that long. It was
Breathe,
just
new
an
life.
extra half second because he had to finish saying the sentence. It was funny.
that's
I
great.
told him after that, I was like, Peter's trying to get you, make sure you're real saved. See if you come out speaking in tongues.
Brother
Ah,
Tyson,
gobbledygook.
Brother Tyson said we should just put a slide in to the baptistry.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yes.
I say yes.
slide.
I mean, what
Kid
what
who grew up in
PK
church?
has not been dying to swim in the baptistry?
Hey, I bet we could get a lot more baptisms through our bus kids.
We have a water
I know.
slide.
It's
at
a
church,
water
kids.
slide.
Whoa! Water slide Sunday.
Actually, that's what we
Here
do
we
at our
go.
camp every VBC.
Yeah, we just
We
count
have
all the balls
150
baptisms.
Count them.
baptisms every
As soon as
year.
they get to the bottom, there's another one. Get to the bottom.
Yes.
There's another one.
We had 150
Baptism.
times 3
Yeah,
baptisms.
they were baptized 3 times.
Yeah.
And then we take them down. When it's our time to go into the lake, go swimming. We count them again.
Yeah, that's right.
There's another one.
Yeah.
There's another one.
Our camp has seen so many baptisms.
I
But
drowned.
first, what we do is we take them on the tube so
them
that
saved.
So they
They
get
get saved.
saved.
so they get saved again.
Hey, and you know what? As you're flying through the air off the tube, you get saved, and then you
And then you get baptized.
That's right.
Immersed.
So count them again.
Count them again.
I like what brother.
Immediately.
I like what Brother Tyson said. I drowned you in the name of the Father. I drowned you, my brother.
Sending you to Jesus, my friend. Sending you to Jesus.
That's right. That's right. So it's busy week. Then we come back and really not a lot of pressing things, is there, next week as far as getting done on the building?
Not that building.
No. Not
Camp.
that building. Is there another building?
Yeah.
Well, camp
too.
that doesn't start next week. That doesn't start for another
Yeah, we
couple
don't
Yeah, it
actually
was-
get into doing
Next
that.
week's kind of an empty one as far as we haven't really put anything in the.
But the week after
slot.
that, we fly out for a week to put in the sound system in Pennsylvania for the Combs
Combs.
Church. And so that'd be pretty exciting.
It's a busy month. Busy.
What is that? Tax season. I don't know. Just thought I'd say it.
Yeah,
Did
my
you haven't done your
taxes
taxes yet?
Mine are done.
Okay.
Ben's-
Mine aren't.
Anybody who gets money back has already filed. Anybody who has to pay, please.
Yeah.
Until the 15th. Yeah.
This is the first year in several that I didn't have to pay in, but because I
That's
didn't
only
have
because
to.
of the state credit for the housing, right?
Well, it's partially the house, and also I went down a job, so I went from 2 jobs to 1, and they must have been so freaked out about it. They sent me a letter. The IRS sent me a letter and made me go through this long process of verifying my identity. And so now I won't get the refund I'm supposed to from the federal government for another 9 to 12 weeks.
Love the
Wow.
IRS. Amen.
Wow.
So it's all good. There was nothing actually wrong.
Did you
It
tell them
just
your last name is
didn't-
Biden?
I asked Chris why she thought that would be, and she said it was probably the house and the fact that I went
Down
my
a job.
income went down. So they're like, "What's going on? You usually pay us. Are you sure we should pay you?"
Do you even exist?
Are you real? Are you dead and just someone else?
So you bought a house and then you quit a job.
They probably don't understand that.
I don't even understand that.
Taxes are just so confusing.
Abolish
That's
the
why you
IRS.
have a tax guy.
It's like, yeah, that is why I have a tax guy. But
I
it's
had
like
a
it doesn't
good
matter.
thing
It's still
happen to me this
confusing.
week. Can I share?
Sure, you already put it on Twitter.
Please.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
We'll put the picture up on the live stream.
I
No, I'm just
didn't
kidding.
even get to like that tweet. I forgot.
Wow.
No, we want to do a live walkthrough. You
I-
like
no.
during the
A
show.
live walkthrough.
Yeah.
So every 2 years, I trade
Really?
my. Where are you going?
Go ahead.
What you're saying is not important, I guess.
Go on, I'm listening. I saw it on Twitter.
Every
already.
2 years.
Saw it on Twitter already.
Every 2 years, I trade my truck in. It gets to either 2 years or a certain amount of mileage, and I try to retain as much value in my vehicles so that when I go to another vehicle, that trades over and I get a good amount of money
Right.
for my vehicle. This year, I was blessed to be able to pay off that truck. So when I went to trade it in, or I went to test drive another vehicle, I had them tell me what they would value my vehicle at and how much they would give me. And this was a dealership here in town. And I test drove a 23 GMC Sierra, just a Sierra.
Just
it's
a Denali. It wasn't Sierra.
It's the HD. It's a step down from the Denali. Anyway, it was nice. I mean, everybody came out and looked at it.
I liked it.
Everybody, yeah, it was nice. But they didn't give me enough for my truck, and I'm really so confused.
I was gonna.
Slap him.
Yeah.
I'm not. What was over there?
The lights
Get a
are
ton
not
of
turned
lights.
on, and it's bothering him. We can do it during the song.
Oh,
Okay.
anyway.
You drove that other truck. It was nice.
I drove the truck. It was nice. I was, but they gave me less than what I wanted for my truck. So, anyway, Will got on the internet.
Yeah.
I can give you the credit.
I'm trying to say before
I'm
they
gonna
even told
give
you
you the
how
credit.
much. I know you. I know you.
And so
I'm looking at this truck. I'm going, this is nice, but this ain't nice enough. And so I got on Google, asked ChatGPT. No, I'm just kidding.
Look, you're the reason we have the house that we do. I was happy
That's
with
right.
the 2-bedroom. And
That's true. Right? They were gonna have a cottage in the
everybody's
woods,
like,
and I
it's
was
not
like,
big
nope.
enough, Dad. I'm serious. Mom loved it,
basically.
but anyways, you're the one that found the house.
Yeah.
So anyway, he gets on the internet and he starts.
I just
Doing-
went to
doing his-
GMC and I
doing his
customized
yeah, he
and they're like, here's 100 and whatever miles away, which it wasn't quite 100. It was a little more
It's a
than
little
that.
more of that, yeah. Anyway, so normally when you go to those sites, they tell you that a dealership has it. You have to verify that it has it because they've left these ads up for. But this is a newer. It's a 24, so technically it's the newest you can get. Yep.
it's so new, it's in the future.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
pretty
Will
much.
had to
the
explain.
dealership calls me and says, "Mr. Reeves." I said, "Yes." He says, "Man, this is your lucky day." Of course, I don't believe in luck. I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, but we have that vehicle." I said, "Great." Anyway, so worked out the particulars. They asked me for pictures of my truck, and I gave him a walk around video and all that. And he got it and goes, "Man, you want a job selling cars?" And I said, "No." But he said, "We'll give you the number here in a little bit. Send it to you." So about 20 minutes later, sent me it, and give me 4,000 more than the other place did,
Awesome.
which takes me over my mark. My mark was 50.
And the vehicle wasn't
It took
any
me to
more
52.
expensive.
Which is crazy.
It was the same price.
That's right.
Yes, same price as a 23,
With less features.
right, with less
Yeah.
features. So ultimately, technically, I've gone up with. I didn't lose any of my money, basically. So
Except for you will lose money in the stupid interest rates.
Thank you.
yeah, but
federal
the plan
government.
is, like we did this year, I'll probably pay it off and get out of it.
Makes
so
sense.
that you don't pay any interest, or hardly any interest. So anyway, so I'm going from blue, Patriot blue, to black again. All black GMC.
It's not Dodge Ram. Not all black Dodge Ram. Dude, you're a traitor. You're
Traitor to
I
the
can't
Ram.
believe you.
I've been
Trade
looking
her in.
at the
Yeah, you
GMCs.
He's been looking
you've
at
been
the
shopping around,
Denali's.
haven't
He
you?
has.
Yeah, those
he's been
Denali.
talking about it for
those
6
grills and it's just the higher up, and I went to 6.6, the diesel, and
So you're gonna tell everybody-
10-speed Allison transmission is pretty nice.
We can tell everybody why you're not getting a Rivian.
Yes.
They won't deliver it.
They're stupid
No,
company.
it would. I had been on order for almost 3 years, maybe a little bit over 3 years, and they kept changing what was available. So I reserved something. Then they said, "Oh, we're going to discontinue that because COVID, and we can't do that." And then the features on the one that they did offer after that,
Changed
they
again.
took those features away, and so yeah. So, but the price never went down. That's the craziest thing.
I think the last time the price went up.
They tried to
Yeah.
bring the price up. Yeah.
So I just got tired of playing the game. So I got my down payment.
See, there's
back
someone
and said,
here has one.
Someone in town.
Someone in town has one.
Yeah, we just
There's a
saw it last
couple,
week
yeah.
at Runza.
Yeah.
There's a couple of the sedans too. I've seen this.
Oh, really?
But that's
saw a
okay
white
because a Rivian
truck.
would have
Saw a
never
white one
pulled.
today.
This morning. Oh, it must be the same
It
one
would
I
never
saw.
pull that camper.
No.
So, and I got to be able to pull the camper when I go to promote the college. We did our first college trip.
We talked about it
Did
some
we already
last
talk
week.
about that? Yeah, it was great. All right, let's go.
Yeah. 920-940-8275 is the phone number. You can also post a song request in the chat. Don't forget the final segment during this season of the Brook on Canaan Radio. The final segment is entitled The Third Degree. That's where you ask us the difficult questions, and we dodge and scurry around those answers. I'm just kidding. We try and answer those questions, so you can ask them by sending us a text 920-940-8275 or post those in the chat. We're going to head to a song, and when we come back, we're going to talk about something very, very interesting. We'll be right back. No Doubt Salvation, Harvest Baptist Church.
Well, we're back, and this week's episode is on handling hurt. The subject matter for the whole year or series is growing up IFB. When so many times on social media, those that have complained about growing up IFB have always claimed that they have been hurt in some way, shape, or form, whether it's emotional hurt or physical abuse. They're always wanting to run down the movement because they feel like they've suffered undue pain and hurt. And so they use that to pretty much tear down the whole movement, and it's all evil and all wrong. So many verses in the Bible come to mind. I think about Matthew 8:6. The Bible says, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea." This is one of the verses that people love using that have grown up in the IFB and said, "I was a little one and I was offended." But if you do a proper Bible study of that verse, it's clearly talking about churches or individuals that stop children from coming to know the Lord. And so that would be a misappropriation of a verse there. My thoughts go to when Jesus made a bunch of statements, was preaching, and then it says in John 6:60, it says, "Many therefore of his disciples, when he had heard this, said, 'This is a hard saying, who can hear it?' And Jesus' answer was, says in verse 61, when Jesus knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, 'Doth this offend you?'" And so Jesus even dealt with those who seemed to have a problem with what he was saying. Most all offenses are built around an individual, their own personal perspective of the Bible. So if they're very immature, they have a very immature way of looking at truth, and they can very easily find themselves offended. I just want to note that a lot of times we get offended not because somebody else tries to offend us or is offensive, but we get offended because we're just immature and selfish. And I'm reminded in 1 Peter 2:18 through 24, I love this portion of Scripture because I think this is helpful. It says, "Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to do to the good and the gentle, but also to the froward. For this is," now there's the stipulation. So you have good leadership and you have bad leadership. You have good leadership that their intention is to lead you and not hurt you. Then you have a forward leadership that maybe has an agenda and doesn't care too much about what's happening to you. So it's very clear that God's making it clear the individual that's being offended has a responsibility, and it's not the responsibility of their state is not based on the outside, right, the other person doing anything to them. But it says in verse 19, "For this is thankworthy if a man for conscience towards God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it if when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently. But if, when you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. For even hereunto there were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example." That tells me that he's showing us how to handle offense. offenses that you don't deserve, offenses that you shouldn't have to suffer. Jesus leaves us an example that you should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who, when he was reviled not again. And when he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously, who is his own self bare our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, being dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. So we've been given a clear-cut illustration. And I think sometimes when people are young, the seriousness of their walk with God so often is perceived as greater than what it really is. And so they get hurt. They don't know how to handle that hurt. And they don't know that there's already a biblical example that God has covered this very subject. Now, saying all that, I am not saying that just because God has given us instructions on how to deal with hurt, that everything should be okay, that we shouldn't mind anything, that we should never, try to fix things, that we shouldn't be affected by what people do around us. Obviously, sexual abuse and physical abuse, those kind of things, really, we need to make sure that we take care of those properly and go to our leadership. That shouldn't be kept secret. A lot of times those things are kept secret, and so they go on and go on and go on, and we actually end up, if you're keeping something a secret, you actually are responsible for it being done repeatedly to you or to others because you're not dealing with it properly. So we don't stand for that stuff around here at our church, and there's a lot of things that we do to make sure that our kids are protected and that people are protected in general. But I wanted to bring this subject up because I think there's a lot of benefit to hearing from this table maybe some things that could easily be perceived as something that you could use to bail out on the IFB. I know that I've heard many stories, and I've met parents of people who their child has gone off and waged a campaign against the parents, and parents are still faithful to church, but now the child is out and has been chewing up the parents in the church, and they have children, and they're just hurting their own children by doing this. But so I thought I'd bring it and talk to you about it. Like I said before, I have not grown up IFB, so I can't speak to that. But I will say that the way I did grow up, I got all of your hurt beat manyfold over. And we're not here to talk about my hurt, but
it is interesting that they often want to say, like I think it went out in the advertisement about, systemic abuse. And, I think, Pastor, coming from the background that you've come from, if it was so bad, you clearly would have recognized when you got into church if there was something, quote unquote, systemic. Yeah. Clearly people are sinners everywhere. But.
Well, yes, I know what abuse is, what real abuse is. And when I did get into the independent fundamental Baptist movement, I was easily able to see the natural hypocrisy in people's lives that often can be construed as
hurtful.
And I think that's one of the reasons that, as you said last week, Hope, the things that have been done to me and being able to just handle them, it's because I understand both worlds, and I understand people are human and they make mistakes. Honestly, I think this statement's going to be really the basic statement throughout the whole broadcast is if people learn to communicate, anything can be fixed.
Yes.
anything can be fixed, but
Right.
people don't communicate. So I just felt like when I came to the Independent Baptist movement, I asked questions. I had pastor for a reason. I remember tons of conversations at your mom and dad's house and asking why people were acting this way or doing this thing. I remember my father-in-law talk about he was abused. I mean, his deacons and the people there, and he had been serving there for 18 years at that time, I think, and I was shocked at how Christians were treating him. So I asked questions. I want to know why that people would act that way, and not so that I can criticize them, but so I can protect myself. But I right away saw that, and it did not deter me from being in church because I already knew there was nobody perfect, and I had been to Methodist church and a Presbyterian church and Catholic church and non-denominational holy roller, speaking in tongues, and I mean, saw some weird stuff, and so I was already aware that whatever I got into, it was very possible that there would be misunderstandings between people. But as far as in any of those churches that I went to all of them long enough to tell you this. There was not a systemic problem in any of those churches. It was just people who were damaged. And when you come into a church and you're damaged, you bring that damage with you. And so you're all learning. And we see that in our Christian schools. Kids come in, some behave better than other ones. Some guys with behavior issues, and some people don't. Some can sit still, and some people can't. And there's needs. That says that they're needed for discipline and correction, and having conversations is always our mode when they're not our kids, so we can't physically discipline them, but our way of handling that is to have conversations with them so that we can find out what's in their head and how they're viewing it. If it's wrong, then we fix it. If it's something that they're just looking at improperly, then we explain it to them. We try to help them come to deal with the reality of their life and responsibilities.
And that's the thing with handling hurts. Nobody here, we're all probably, as we tell our stories, are going to tell it from the vantage point of how did we overcome that. But that in no way excuses someone who is hurtful. So I don't think anyone should ever be misguided or get the wrong impression that because I need to figure out how to handle hurts and I am not responsible for the other person. In other words, I can't fix another person. I can only fix me. At the same time as we're telling these stories, that is no excuse for people who are hurtful, or for ourselves when we inadvertently or even on purpose are hurtful to other people.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think about this, but I think it can be a good time to. I know you're not all chopping at the bit to share how you've been hurt in the acting movement, but that brings to mind an actual story where I was involved with and be the one that gave the hurt, and how that person has not let that go to this day. When they were somebody apologized to them, and do you think is there a problem sharing that?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Years ago, I don't know how old I was. Family was young.
Probably 32-ish. I don't know.
Yeah. Grown man. Wasn't in the ministry yet. Probably Bible college.
I think it was later than that, but
Maybe it was after I left college, but was at my home church. I went up to Michigan, and was I think Thanksgiving time, and my brother-in-law, the youngest brother-in-law, had just gotten his driver's license, and so he was excited to show off his driving abilities. And I think my mother-in-law had asked if we would go get something from the store or something. I can't really remember the specifics of how we both ended up in a car together. That right there was
with him driving.
With him driving was the first mistake. But we ended up in the car together, and we went to wherever we went, and we're headed back. And he was driving sporadically. Now, I guess if I would have been 16, 17, 18 years old, I'd been like, yeah, this is cool, you know.
You would have hung out the window screaming.
Yeah. I'd be like, yeah, you know.
But now you were a young dad.
I would ask to drive so I could be the one driving like an idiot, you know. But it was dangerous. And I guess for me, I was a little bit more sensitive to the fact that I was a provider I was married and I provided for my family. And I didn't desire to get in an accident.
And you probably didn't trust his driving skills.
Yeah, well, I didn't. He's 16, just got his license. He's driving his mom and dad's car. And I said to him, you need to stop driving like an idiot. And he just kept doing it. And there were words exchanged, and I was getting mad. I was just getting mad. And you gotta understand, I got my life in the hands of a 16-year-old, arrogant, self-centered, show-off who just got his driver's license, and I'm getting pretty aggravated. Now, I came from a world that's completely different than where he came from, where everybody was in control of their temper and was kind, and you could be rude to them and they would never get mad and they wouldn't correct you. I'm not from that world. If you get rude to me, I'm going to correct you. If you put my life in jeopardy, I will physically do what I need to do to reel that in so that my life's safe. Anyway, I had warned him. I had warned him again. Finally, I said, look, I told you to stop. This isn't your car. You're putting my life in jeopardy. And if you don't stop, I'll make you stop. And he, at that moment, you know, he tested me. And it was just a knee-jerk reaction. It's just instantaneous. I just reached over. He's driving, and I just right fist right to his mouth. And
ouch.
I know it was a reaction. It wasn't like I calculated, because I probably would have been wiser to watch how hard I hit him. But I didn't hold back. I just hit him hard, and I split his lip. And as soon as I split his lip, I went, boy, that was dumb. You know, I just knew right away that was a terrible thing. And so, you know how it is when you do something wrong, you know you're going to get in trouble for it, and you're sitting there trying to calculate. And I had already gone through this whole thing in my life where I wasn't going to make excuses. You know, so he pulls in the driveway, mad, blood everywhere, you know, and shoves it in the drive, and it screeches to, you know, or in the park, and it screeches to a halt in the parking lot. And Mom and Dad had come running out the door, my mother and father-in-law, and they're coming towards me, and neither one of them look happy. And Dan's out of the car, and blood's running down his face, and I'm thinking, God, night, what am I going to say to these people? That was just way out of line. And I'll never forget it. My mother-in-law, I thought she was going to Dan to give him a hug. She went right past him and came to me. This is what she said. She said, it was going to happen. I'm just glad it was nobody in the world, and I'm glad you did it. And she hugged me. And I was like, okay. I wasn't expecting that. The one that was mad was my father-in-law. And rightfully so, not criticizing him for that. And I don't hold that against him. I mean,
if it was your kid, you'd
if
been
it was
mad
my
too.
kid, I'd be mad too. I mean, there's no criticism there. But my mother-in-law had that bit of wisdom because she's the one that homeschooled him. And she's the one that had problems controlling him. So she understood and just was glad that it wasn't somebody in the world that did it that he got into with. And Dan went to the hospital, and Dad had taken him there, and they sewed up his lip. And I'm feeling bad the entire time. And I apologized to Dan and to Dad, and what can you do? I mean, it's done, and I seriously was sorry, and the rest of the vacation was terrible, and I felt bad, and there was just no words. So
you learned a lesson. That's what the only thing you can do is learn a lesson.
Yeah, definitely learned a lesson. Anyway, so those kind of things are bad. And I hurt him, and I wish I wouldn't have. You know, if I could take it back, I would take it back. But back when he was 16 years old, I apologized to him, and I meant it. And to my knowledge, he forgave me. And Mom and Dad forgave me. And I thought it was done until 6 months ago, or maybe less than that. You know, his wife's on social media talking about me hitting a 16-year-old kid.
Assaulting a kid.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I thought we were over this, you know. But what they did was he allowed it to continue to eat at him, and there was no real forgiveness, and it ate at him, and he passed it to his wife, and it has passed to his boys, his kids. And so now there is that, and there's nothing I can do about it. Even if I got on the internet and apologized to everybody, it wouldn't serve any purpose, because they didn't forgive me then. They're not going to forgive me now. But that is not what you find in the independent fundamental Baptist movement. You don't find a huge amount of people losing their temper and becoming abusive physically to people,
Right.
and
Or it being excused if somebody does.
right, or excused. And
Right.
my actions were never excused.
No.
And this was a family thing; it wasn't a church thing. So to have it related to the IFB, or have it hurt the independent fundamental Baptist movement because I'm an independent Baptist preacher, it's just, they're just trying to tear down a movement because they're bitter, and they don't go to independent Baptist church, and you know, they have no standards, and you know, that's their choices. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But to take a situation where somebody did wrong one time in their life, did wrong to them, and then made an apology, and to say, "Hi, I got something I'm going to use against the independent Baptists," is just wrong. So that's a case where I didn't grow up IFB, but because I was still fighting a lot of my bad character, and I was still, had the character level of a worldly person. He was caught in a situation where I couldn't handle his foolishness and his childishness, and I let him have it, and it was a mistake, and I shouldn't have let it cause me to lose my temper, and I've been paying for it. But what is there to do at this point? This is not independent fundamental Baptist movement. This was the stupid movement of Bill Reeves. So, I mean, the only thing is they're the ones that are allowing themselves to be hurt.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where we come to the vantage point then of, so when something is done wrong to you personally, how do you handle it? They really resent the fact, a lot of people who've gone away from the IFB really resent the fact that we say so often that they're just bitter.
Yeah.
They just hate that. And yet, when you have wrong things done to you that you can't let go, in the end, you can't, once you've had the discussion, you've talked to somebody, you've tried to resolve the situation, that person either apologizes and you have to forgive, you need to forgive, or that person doesn't apologize. There's still a certain amount of forgiveness that you have to proffer, the kind of forgiveness that is in, and trust that the Lord will take care of it in the end. And there's vigilante justice is not needed because we have the Lord, and we will all stand before him someday. So I know I'm one of the older ones here, so I'm going to give my story really quick, one that I thought of. And this is when I was a teenager. And I went to a big Christian school. They didn't have the same standards that I had, that my parents had. And there was a lot offered there because it was such a large Christian school. And one of the things, of course, they had basketball and soccer and everything, and then they had a really large cheerleading group. And one of the cheerleading instructors personally came up to me and wanted me to be a cheerleader. I think this was maybe my, 10th grade year or something like that. And we lived like a half an hour from the school, so it wasn't easy for us to necessarily be involved in something that you had to be at, practices 3 times a week and go to all the games and everything like that. But I really, because I was personally invited, and I thought, I wanted to do it. and went to my parents, and we had a bunch of long discussions, and I really wanted to do it, and my parents were really hesitant, just because of the time commitment and other reasons too. Probably mainly the time commitment, but because of that would then take away from other spiritual things that I was doing or that they were able to do. And there were 6 kids in my family. I was the second oldest, so there's already a lot going on with my dad being a pastor of a different church. So he had our own activities going on. Well, it ended up that they didn't allow me to do it. And I remember being kind of frustrated, but letting it go. Just like, okay, it is what it is. And then like 2 years later, when my next sibling was coming along the line, and they had reevaluated and they let her be a cheerleader, and my 4th youngest sister, be a cheerleader. And I remember having to kind of go through it again, because by now I'm like a junior or senior, and here they are, and and Mom's like, well, you can go do it now. Well, now I would have to be on the JV squad, not the varsity squad, because I hadn't been a cheerleader. But the funny thing is by that time, I had actually been won over in my heart and in my mind that it really wasn't something that I wanted to invest my time in. And even more so after watching my sisters, how much time they put in, how all the games they had to go to, all the practices,
I think it's only fair to say how you came to that. You went to a Christian school that really had a bunch of different churches involved in it,
right,
and their standards were not. And so you began to see the wisdom that your parents initially had by telling you no. And you weren't frustrated anymore because you agreed with it. You said, okay, I see this.
Right.
So then it was shocking when you saw things change. And that's where you thought, man, maybe I could, you can look back and say, I could have been better, but because you had handled it.
Exactly. As I'm telling the story, it's like, well, you don't sound like you're ever mad about it. Well, a teenager struggle. You struggle. You have to go through those things. You have to think about them. You have to, if you have a relationship with the Lord, is the only way, that you get over things, and that because in the end, the Lord knows what is best for you, and you have to have that trust and faith in Him. And it's part of building your walk with the Lord as a young person, as you begin to experience these hurts and you learn how to take them to the Lord. Mm-hmm. You can't always have a sibling, or you can't always have a friend, or you can't always have a parent that's going to understand. I mean, that is the cry and hue of every young person. Nobody understands me, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody truly does completely understand you the way the Lord can. And you have a choice then. You have a choice to become bitter, take that hurt, blow it up, make it something huge, and then pile on every hurt after that. Or you forgive. Or in my case, I don't think there was really anything to forgive. I mean, I suppose if you say I needed to forgive my parents because they wouldn't let me, and then they let my sister, the inconsistency. But really, I thank the Lord, because exactly what I needed happened, and I'm serving the Lord now. Partly because those decisions that taught me to really evaluate, where am I going to put my time and effort.
When they did that, when they had their stand, the first initial reaction, and you wanted to fight that, and their reasoning seemed at that time full of holes, did you feel and struggle with the fact that there was some hypocrisy there, and that could you not apply that then to other areas of your life if you let it get at you?
Sure, because I remember even at the time going, I don't think this is anything about serving the Lord. This is only about what you want to do, whether or not you want to bother to
take me everywhere.
Take me.
Right.
Or let me get my driver's license and drive.
And we talked about, you shared this story with me several different times. But I think one of the other things that you said that was hard when they said no and then later turned around and said yes to your sisters was you had already struggled with making friends and fitting in, and your sisters didn't really have that problem. And then on top of doing the cheerleading, then it seemed like they had all these friends. And so maybe it wasn't necessarily just...
Sure, it's always social things.
Right. A lot of it is socially. You
That's
look
all
at
it is with cheerleading.
Like how frustrating that is when you already feel like the ugly duckling that you're trying to survive in
more
this
like
world.
Susie Spiritual.
And then you feel like you got your knees cut out, your legs cut out from underneath you. And
that's why you're so short.
You sit, and you sit there and you watch your sisters get to do. The sisters who are already much better at socializing by this age and get that. I know later on you talked about, even in college, how that was like an on again, off again struggle. But that particular thing helped you to really cement your relationship with God, because that had to be the most important relationship in your life. Whereas your sisters were a lot more social, and that probably added to the struggle of connecting with the Lord in a personal way at an earlier age, because it was all about fitting in, looking good, participating with your friends, doing all that stuff. So I love that story every time you share it.
Yeah. Or instead, I feel like I avoided so much of that, by not, by not having to constantly measure up socially and do what everybody else is doing, and learning to deal with the fact that, because as you serve the Lord and as you get older, it can be a lonelier life. If you look at it in how I'm relating to other people, and you care more about how other people, your interactions with them, or you care about how the Lord is looking at what you're doing. That's really the whole essence of being hurt or not being hurt.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have many young people listening, but if you have parents who say, no, you can't do this, even if it's a selfish reason on the parents' part, like, no, I don't have time to run you here and there and everywhere, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You really have to take these times and opportunities of aloneness to be alone with the Lord, because you're never alone. And when you develop a healthy relationship with the Lord and a healthy walk with God first, when you're young, it makes adulthood, I am telling you, it makes adulthood so much easier when you are serving the Lord, to get over what people do to you. Because when you were younger, you weren't constantly trying to fight through fitting in and all this stuff. I mean, you still had it, but in my case, there wasn't a whole lot of people to fit in with. So, except for my siblings. But I resonate with that story, because I feel like that was when I was younger, that was when my relationship with the Lord was really cemented. And even some into college, when I went through kind of that stage where I didn't fit in either, and just really having to go back to the Word of God and go back to prayer and my relationship with the Lord by myself. And now when I look back, I'm just so thankful. I think that's how you tell the story now. It sounds like you're just so grateful. It was so easy, but it wasn't at the time.
Right.
I think when we're in our own world, everything is extremely sensitive. We think it can't get any worse. It's terrible. Yeah. And again, I return to the idea of taking personal responsibility brings you to the point of conversation, seeking counsel. That's why the Bible's riddled with verses about instruction and discipline and correction and rebuke and just going, having conversations. You got to talk about it. You can't bottle it up. And these young teenagers, if that's not taught to them, they grow up with a lot of resentment, and dealing with resentment turns you into a bitter person, and it defiles many, the Bible says. So it's not just defiling you, and that's what we're trying to avoid, because there are these people that have left the independent fundamental, and they have parents. There are families that are so devastated not because our family has gone on to continue to stay faithful to what we were taught in the beginning, but they've decided they're going to go another direction, and there will be forever a division in there because we're the reason that they had to go away. And we're not. They haven't learned that they live in a really messed up world, and people are not normal, and when you're related, you have a very high responsibility to be forgiving.
Yeah.
And it's just not happening. So
I know as an individual, it's important to categorize in your mind an understanding of the different levels of hurt that can be committed. Looking at a society that we have today, accusations are a dime a dozen. Definitions are variable. And so they change what the definition of words are. They change what it means. accusations are easily believed, sometimes rightfully so, most often not. And so when talking about dealing with hurt, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what is hurt? You know, I think you both touched on that a little bit, because obviously there is a vast difference of importance, or I don't know, between being emotionally hurt. You know, somebody says, you know, I'm hurt because they called me fat. Okay,
Right.
you know, or I'm hurt because they punched me in the mouth,
Right.
or they physically or sexually abused me.
Yeah. Big difference.
That's a big difference. And I think what happens often in the generation that we have today, because we're not tough, society has gone so far from biblical principles in this area of taking personal responsibility, of being able to go to the Lord and have a relationship with God to deal with the hurts that they have. Instead, they lash out. And everybody's dealing with their hurt from the perspective of themselves. So in society that we have today, we're putting, you know, I was emotionally abused on the same level as being able to define that as physical abuse. And I was talking to my brother this week about this topic a little bit, and I said, you know, I think it does an injustice to those who I see in the bus ministry, in you know, just in North Platte, the kids, the adults who are abused, whether it's by their boyfriend or girlfriend, or whether it's by their parents, or, you know, mom's, you know, boyfriend. You know, that's real abuse. I mean, I've seen black eyes. That's real physical and emotional abuse, where they have to live in a home that smells like pot, and they have to be surrounded by alcohol and beer cans, and they have to learn how to, you know, when to go into their room and lock the door, you know, when their mom or dad comes in home in a drunken stupor. You know, that's abuse. That's hurt. And so I think it's important that we define the difference here between, you know, my pastor looked at me and berated me, and the abuse that others have actually gone through. You know, the term has been passed around in IFB for a couple years now, spiritual PTSD.
Oh my goodness.
And to me, I think that is a grave error, injustice, that to the military men and women that have served, that actually have been on the front lines, have actually been shot or had to shoot somebody or had to experience things, and not even so much anymore. I mean, there's definitely, I'm sure, to an extent, still out there, but back during the World War and during where you're walking over bodies and the things that they're seeing, they experience PTSD, you know, but that's a worldly, you know, medical term for post-traumatic stress, you know, syndrome.
And the injustice is that these preachers know that, but they think it's cute to produce another demographic of people that they can get to their church because they grew up under daddy who was mean.
It's manipulation.
And what's that?
I said it's manipulation.
Yeah, I just think they see another whole demographic of people they think they can help, but to do that, you actually have to
Overemphasize the hurt.
You have to overemphasize something, and you actually hurt church, not just. I mean, it's sickening to watch kids run down their parents that have been given their life and serving the Lord. Who said they were perfect? It's not about perfect. It's about you're using your life with your parents and their imperfections to say, don't go to the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church because that's bad. And that's the problem. PTSD. When that first started coming out, and I can tell you the name of the guy who started quoting that garbage, buying into it. You know, I came out and said it. Preachers have no right to claim that term, none. That belongs to men and women who have given their life, and more the ways than just physically. They're on the. And you should
let's put their boots on Normandy, on the beaches of Normandy. Let them see the horrors of that day and come back and toss around spiritual PTSD.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to be shaking their head like,
It's
yeah,
like a bunch of
you'll
babies.
be fine.
Yeah.
Be a man. Now, the reason I brought this up and categorizing this is because I'm not saying that people don't get hurt in lesser ways or other ways. I just think it's important in order to deal with something properly, you have to identify it. And what we have is let's slap a claim on the IFB as, they've got a problem with systemic abuse. Okay, let's talk about that. First of all, are we talking about physical abuse and sexual abuse? Because last time I checked, the Catholic Church is known a lot more
Anything they don't like.
for those types of things. Now, does it happen in IFB churches? It happens in every type of church in every single place. Is there some sort of mysterious, cover up that IFB is known for doing? Not that I know, not in my church. And that's the beauty of independent fundamental Baptist church. So again, that is left up to call something systemic. That's left up to your personal perspective. And you can do as much homework as you feel like you have accomplished, but that's from your perspective. Because there are others who have grown up in different churches, have gone to, all of us in here have been a part of different churches. And I would never say that. It's obviously an issue. So biblically, there's a way that we should deal with hurt like that. That's why we have the law system in America that's set in place, and the police, and it has been done before. Especially as a pastor, you've had to call the police on times where you were notified of physical or sexual abuse. And that needs to be the first thing that happens in a church.
Absolutely.
The church is not, God did not set up the church as a body of ruling law or to judge people or to keep rule. God gave us the government for that. God gave us that. So immediately that should go to the government. That should go to the law office. Yeah. But then we bring it down. Okay. So how do we deal with other types of hurts? What are the other types of hurts that there are? Okay, I've heard the illustration that was used. I'm being a little bit lengthy here. I'm just trying to get my point home. But I heard the illustration used that there was somebody who went to his pastor, and he said, I believe that I'm called to preach. I believe I'm called to be a pastor. And I don't know the circumstances. I don't even know. I just heard this. And the pastor, along the line, said something about I don't think you're called to preach. I don't think that you've got the gifts. Or I don't think you're capable. I think that you just need to serve here at this church under me for all your life. And I'm sure there were other things said, and I don't know. But the man left the office discouraged and was hurt deeply for years. And it took him years to be able to get over that, says the story that I heard. And I'm like, okay, so is that spiritual abuse? Is that what that was, even if the pastor was wrong? I just think we're so far from biblical principles that we can't categorize that and being like, okay, so what do you do when something like that happens? First of all, if God really calls you to preach, don't you think that he'll communicate that with the leadership that he's given you? And if that leadership is still wrong in your opinion, if they're leave.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right, but why
find
are
new
you walking
leadership.
around feeling abused, feeling, punked? Here's the thing, victimhood, being victimized is the cool thing to do
Well,
today.
I think that kind of response, there's no way, I'm going to say this, and there's no way to separate from it. But when you act that way, it shows that you're being selfish and self-centered. You don't care about the rest of the world. You want to take your moment and label it the way you want to have the woke mentality. I'll give the word a new definition. I'm calling it the worst. It's the worst thing that ever happened in the world, and this is why I did what I did. And if we say, I don't think that's abuse, now we're in trouble. So it's okay for you to say it is abuse, but it's not okay for us to say it isn't abuse, and to categorizing it by, hey, no.
Isn't that interesting that those who say they've been abused by instances like that want to be heard and believed, but the same individuals that say that isn't abuse and have experienced the same thing, they want to push off and say, no, that's not, you need to listen to me.
Yeah. The abused person's experience is valid, but the person who went through an experience similarly and says
and came
it
out
was
fine.
not abuse,
Yeah.
the Lord had a purpose and a plan, they don't deserve to be heard.
Yeah. I just want to read a few verses and then I'll be done. But these types of things are going to happen. You're going to be hurt. Growing up, I think the greatest hurt that I've experienced over the years has been investing in people, or just growing up with people that you're friends with in the ministry, and they turn around, leave, and then attack your parents, attack your church, attack you. And, I've stood there in a point of tears before, trying to figure out, why is this happening? What have we done, to cause this? And not saying that we've been perfect in every instance, but that's the level of hurt. And what do you have to do in all of those cases? And the Bible is so chock full of this topic about how other people hurt you, what you're supposed to do, forgiving 70 times 7. It's just, there's so much. But I want to read a few different portions. In Romans chapter 12 and verses 17 through 20, it talks about this very topic. It says, recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. What we have today is a lot of people who've been so hurt that they're being overcome with this evil, instead of overcoming that evil with good. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 7, and the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. People have their mental abuse, emotional abuse, and their hearts abused. If they had a proper walk with God, then that peace would be able to keep their hearts and their minds from that turmoil. And last thing I wanted to point out was, I just read through this portion of scripture a little while ago, 1 Samuel chapter 25. David sends some of his men to go talk to Nabal, and he had kept and protected Nabal's men in the field and the sheep and the flock. And he wanted to pass through the area and wanted Nabal to help him. And Nabal basically berated his servants and sent them back and said, I'm not going to hurt you. Who's David? I don't know who that is. And so David turned around, took his men, and said, we're going to go take care of business. And, of course, Abigail, Nabal's wife, stops it, comes, intervenes, intercepts David before he gets there, basically gets on her knees, asks for forgiveness for her husband, says that he's drunk and he's a son of Belial, basically. And so David says, fine, I'll leave him alone. Later in that chapter, God strikes Nabal and he dies.
Right.
And then this is what David says. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. So David wanted to take things into his own hands because he was wronged. He was abused. He was berated. But David classifies it here as if he would have done that, it would be evil. And he said, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the Lord, because the Lord took care of it for him. And that's a message to everybody who's been abused. It is not your job to build a platform and try to expose all of these things and try to go around and pull people out. Your job is to give that to the Lord, trusting that God will take care of the reproach that you were given. Give it to God. If you need to move yourself, move yourself. But you choose to be bitter. You choose to be hurt. And until you understand what David said, what the Bible talks about, and says personal responsibility, forgive, forget, move on. And if you have to remove yourself from a situation, so be it. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Give it to God.
I mean, just all the stories in the Old Testament. If you're struggling with hurt, just go back through the Old Testament and start reading some of those stories. Joseph. I think of the little maid who was captive and yet told Naaman about how he could go get healed of his leprosy. Yep. I think Esther, Hannah, even Jacob's wives, the ones that were fighting with each other, and so many hurts. And yet, even when they were really, truly hurt or abused by captors or, ungodly people, God used it all, for good. And I have a verse, too, that I wanted to read real quick, if I have it here. If I can find it.
While you're looking for it,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think something that David said was very true. about this very topic and how it has been weaponized on all levels, and how muddy the waters have become because people do change definitions, and it's like they equate, mental hurt with sexual abuse, and you're just like it's a crazy world we live in. Sometimes you look at it and you just go, like there's no point in arguing with you guys because you refuse to accept basic definitions, and you just twist things to people just make no sense. But what I was trying to get at is, I think there's a lot of these issues that we're talking about that honestly people just don't approach the solution from a biblical standpoint. You're talking about the illustration of the gentleman who went to his pastor and talked about wanting to preach or whatever. Why do we not? Why do we have this inability to accept God's word and the promises that He makes? What's the Bible say? The king's heart is in the hand of
the Lord.
The Lord, He turneth it whither. So even if he is a froward leader, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. The Lord can still change his mind. And like you said, just go somewhere else. Stop being a persecuted person. You could do that too, but I think that there's a step before that people disconnect from. Mm-hmm. The fact that they can trust that God has the leadership and can guide the leadership regardless of if they're in the right or in the wrong. Pastor preached a message. I've mentioned it so many times, probably every episode. He preached about how God works everything for good. You look at things that in the moment you're angry. You're like, this is wrong. You're wrong. You hurt me. And 5 years later, you're like, man, I'm so glad that happened. That saved me from this, and this. Right. But in the moment, you're all angry and mad. But we can't stop and trust God's promises and trust that God knows what He's doing. All we are is selfish. Like you said we're selfish.
Our level of faith.
And exactly, it exposes your level of faith. I think, to speak a little bit to what you were saying, there's an injustice that's being done by biblical leadership, people who are making podcasts and talking about these topics and addressing them from the standpoint like the person being hurt can do anything to fix the person that's hurting.
It's about vengeance.
Hurting others. Mm-hmm. They're making it about vengeance. Instead of looking at the person that's being hurt, and this sounds so insensitive.
But now what can you do? Yeah.
Looking at the person being hurt and saying, thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at them, they say, you're right. Pastors are just hurting people. And it's from the vantage point of talking about how terrible all these people. Okay, they are. But what the Bible doesn't dismiss hardness. It doesn't say it's not there. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say you're not going to be hurt. Mm-hmm. What's it say? Endure it as a good soldier. I've got a bunch of lace-wearing, emotionally...
And they will tell you, no, they're not. They're not bitter. But obviously when they go off and say, well, at the very least, he's not qualified to be a pastor. He shouldn't be a pastor. He needs to resign.
Giving no ability for grace.
Even if you resigned, they still wouldn't have got the bitterness solved in their heart.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the issue is not me or you or the pastors.
Right.
The issue is them. They're broken way before they ever get offended.
You can't define that. Like, so how hard does a pastor have to be to the point where
That's when it's
it's subjective depending on the person, depending on what you think, and it makes toothless pastors is what it does.
Here's a level in which you need to be hard. Simple truth. Mm-hmm. This is a hard saying. Truth. It wasn't just a hard preaching. He said, this is a hard saying. Mm-hmm. And the disciples said, who can hear it? And Jesus said, oh, they're offended. Mm-hmm. And the Bible tells us, great peace have they.
Which love thy law.
Which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. So that means it makes sense. These people who are complaining have no peace. Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder if they have a problem with the Bible. I wonder if they turned away from the King James Bible. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they don't even read the thing. Mm-hmm. So everything's outlined. Yeah. I think Jesus makes it plain. He says, you've done a great error and injustice because you in this church are taking other people in the church to court. So you get to the point where you're taking them to the worldly court to solve your problems because you've been offended. When the truth is, the issue is forgiveness, which is the basic understanding of our religion. Mm-hmm. You're struggling with the concept of your responsibility to be turn the other cheek.
If someone takes your shirt, give them your
Yeah.
cloak too, or
Yep,
whatever
go the
verse
extra
is.
mile. Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting to me going back to the story that David referenced about the person who was hurt because they were told they weren't qualified right yet to be a pastor, is they actually walked away and proved it by not being able to get over that simple hurt, not being able to figure out how to fix that, whether to fix the opinion of their leadership by going to the leader saying, tell me what I can work on, what can I improve, or taking
That's the other side.
know?
It was a point I was going to get to, was how many of these people who claim to have been hurt have gone to the person that's hurt them,
Right.
and said, "Hey, you've hurt me.
Yeah.
Can you help? Can you either help me get over this, or I want to let you know that,
My
that you've
brother-in-law
hurt me."
never came to me from that day till now.
Right.
Has never picked up the phone and said, I'm still struggling with what you did.
Which is another Bible principle of how to handle these situations.
Right.
It gets broken down into very simple, easy to understand procedures that can make it so much
Rules.
easier. But
Rules.
but what we've talked about and said more than once tonight is there's a selfishness. There's a and honestly, the very
Pride.
next verse in 2 Timothy, the one I read about, enduring hardness is a good soldier. The very next verse says, "No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life." Why? That he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. Who's the ultimate one that we're trying to please? There's suddenly the emotional disconnect. It's disconnected. It's not as big a deal anymore. You're in war. You know what? The person behind you shoots you on accident. That's gonna hurt. But you're in war. You're worried about the enemy. You're worried about moving forward.
Don't turn
I
around
think
and start
too
shooting all your own guys.
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
you-
Just because one clipped you on accident, or you got hurt because you were an idiot and in the way and you weren't supposed to be there.
What was that
It's just
statement you made at dinner?
play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah,
That's exactly right,
That's
right?
exactly it. That's
So-
exactly it.
So I wanted to speak to. Did you want to share your verse, Mom?
Yes,
before
thank
I
you.
do, though?
1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And it's funny because it's surrounded by rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing, and then in everything give thanks. For this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Quench not the spirit, despise not prophesying, prove all things. Then a couple verses later, and it's like, and the very God of peace sanctify you wholly.
Yeah.
It's just completely understanding your relationship with the Lord, that He has you in His hands. And if you are walking in His will, which puts some responsibility on you to be walking in His will, but if you're walking in His will, He is guiding the things, and He allows things into your life, even bad things. But what does He say? He's going to give you a way to be able to handle them.
I think
He walks
people
with
end
you.
up hurting themselves more by not staying right with God, because we're all going to be hurt. I said this
Right.
last week. We're all, every single one of us are hurt on some degree and some level. To be honest with you, before I ever got into church, I was physically abused, and there were other kind of things that were going on that I don't never want to talk about. But I'm not bitter about them. I don't like bringing. It's not a big. Just life's got to go on, and I really took that attitude once I developed a relationship with Christ, because I couldn't get away from the idea that He forgave me for all my stupid stuff,
Right.
and He doesn't leave me or forsake me. As messed up as I was at the point of me getting saved, I was like, okay, look, I have no right.
So there's a couple things I wanted to say. Will, you're exactly right. I think there are so many steps before leaving that people just skip. They don't do them. And I kind of wanted to highlight a couple of those, which is obviously, let's say your leadership tells you something or they do something, you get hurt, you feel hurt. We're not talking about abuse. We're talking about somebody said something, they hurt your feelings, they could be wrong.
You're
completely.
offended.
You're offended.
You got authority a problem.
Well, it could be, but it's gonna happen, and I'm taking it from the side of let's say I'm gonna
Let's say you're
validate.
just in your cause.
I'm gonna
Let's say you're-
validate
yeah.
that you are hurt,
Yeah.
and it's a legitimate thing you are struggling with. The first step is to walk away after you're in that initial confrontation, is to walk away and go to the Lord first, and that goes right into what you just said about enduring hardness as a good soldier. You have to review, is this something that is, I can let this go? Should I trust that the Lord is going to take care of my leadership, maybe change their mind? I'm going to give it some time. And for me, that's one of the things that's always been so helpful, is just to sit down and go, okay, I'm going to give this some time. And I set actual amounts of time. I'm going to give this a week. I'm going to pray about this for a week. And then if I'm still bothered by it, then I'm going to go to the next step, what should the next step be? You go to the person who hurt you. It says in Matthew 18:15 to go to your brother who has trespassed against you. If you are skipping this step and you leave, you are wrong. End of story. You are wrong. I have a story. I went to Bible college, and I really struggled with making friends and connecting. I was always slightly the oddball because I really loved the Lord, and there were just things that I wouldn't, in the dorm situation, I would not participate in, and I was like, I can't believe Christians are doing this stuff. And it just, my first semester drew such a big line between me.
I think you should say.
Yeah, you should say it.
In her dorm, one day she calls me and said, Dad,
Oh, yeah.
they have locked me out of this dorm room
Out of my room.
because they're having a Victoria
Secret.
Secret
Yeah.
thing where they had gone to Victoria's Secret in the mall.
They were doing a fashion show.
done fashion.
Amongst
They were
the
putting their
herself
underwear on
and then parading around, and they didn't want Hope in there
and
because they.
That's
she
what they
would say
said when I
something.
knocked on the door and they went. It was locked. They were like, "You don't want to come in here," and there's a bunch of them yelling.
Premier
or
Bible
laughing.
College.
And I was like, "Okay, why? It's my room. I need to get in here." And my roommate told me, like, through the door. She didn't even open the door. Through the door, kind of told me what they were doing. And so at that moment, I think I started crying right away because I was just like, unbelievable. What do you even do? Do you go to your dorm what do you even
Rain
do?
down fire from heaven.
So, just stuff like that. Just that right there. I was on the outside. I didn't get to have close friendships because at the end of the day, the preacher there found out about it. Girls were mad. They no longer were allowed to even go to Victoria's Secret to buy themselves
Tell them why
underwear.
the preacher found out.
So my dad called the pastor, and then the pastor's wife called me, and we had a discussion.
And me and that pastor were real close, right?
No, not
It caused
no.
him a lot of problems.
Yes. I'm sorry. That was mostly me causing a lot of problems.
Yeah, well.
So anyways, that was one of the biggest things, one of the first things right out of the gate. And there was a lot of things similar to that were going on in dorm life that I was constantly put in this position. Do I tell on people? Do I not? Ugh, what do you even do? But that pretty much really narrows down your friend group, especially in a small Bible college, of who will associate with you, because you're the weird one that's going to either turn them in if they do something wrong, or
not participate,
preach
speak
at
up.
them,
Right.
or I just won't participate, and that makes everybody uncomfortable.
And it's never they're doing something right, even though they might have different beliefs than you. It's that they're doing something they know the administration.
Oh, they know it's wrong.
They know it's wrong.
They absolutely know it's wrong.
Somehow you're the wrong one?
Yeah. Well, and so one of the things that I really struggled with is I didn't have any leadership that backed me up. I felt not only at odds with the student body, I felt that way with most of the staff
Because
members.
when you were bringing it to them, you were becoming the problem. You were bringing them problems to solve. So
Right.
you are the problem. If
So
you were
I was
gone,
the
they wouldn't have to
problem.
deal with them.
And specifically in that situation, I was told I shouldn't have. I wasn't told outright, but it was basically suggested that I should not have gone to my parents. I should have called them first, and that maybe they would believe me more if I had done that. And so
It's the parents that told you to go to them.
right? Well, because of that stigma of just very first thing out of the gate, this basically happens. I just really struggled, and so because of that, there were some leaders on the college staff that I was drawn to because I could tell they were more spiritual. But when I would go to them, we'd have this great one-on-one conversation. But then in a church setting in public, it was like I didn't exist. They would walk right by me, and it was like I didn't. And I would get so confused. And this one particular lady who I still love to death to this day, I kept talking to Mom about it, and she's like, "Well, why don't you talk to her?" So I did, but I'm not real good. Like, I get emotional and I start crying, and then nobody wants to deal with that. So what I ended up doing is I wrote a letter, and I remember I had that letter for about 2 weeks before I actually gave it to her, because I kept wrestling with, am I crazy? Am I making this a bigger deal than it is? But I did. I finally gave it to her. It was the best thing I could have done. It was the best. Now, I did go to the Lord, and I got advice. I got counsel from my parents and my home pastor. And at the end of the day, it was all the same thing. You feel hurt by this person, and it wasn't even a big deal. It wasn't a big hurt. But I felt hurt. I felt unheard. I felt unloved. And I just could not understand it. So I wrote a letter, and I explained how I felt. And I will never forget this. She wrote me a little card, gave me this cute book that I still have in my stash of books. And she just said in her letter, she said, listen, I can't choose. I cannot always choose who to get close to, because I don't know that would necessarily be fair. But if you choose to get close to me, I am open for that. So essentially what she was saying was, you approach me, we're good. I don't have, it was not personal. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that. Really, really helped me. Did we get real close? No, I don't ever feel like we were ever as close as I wished we could have been. But many years down the road, when we decided to start, well, not many years, a few years down the road, we started the Bible college, and then probably another 5 or 6 years when I moved into the dormitories. I will never forget that this helped me so much, because when you're dealing with people leaving and saying bad things about you, and you're helping people over and over again, they disappoint you, they make bad choices, they go away from the Lord. As somebody who's serving in the ministry, that hurts you so deeply. And so you start building slowly up this wall. And I remember looking back, and I know exactly what the problem was now. The problem was she'd been hurt so many times. Do you know how many college students she had to take to doctors because they were pregnant? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how many times would you have to do that before you just put up this wall that you're not going to get personally invested in somebody that much? Because they will hurt me. Mm-hmm. And they will devastate me. And specifically in her case, bringing them into your life around your kids. I get it now. But I didn't walk away feeling so bitter and hurt because I went to her. I followed the biblical process, which I went to God, I gave it some time, and then I went to her. I got an answer. Was it exactly what I wanted to hear? No.
But it helped you for years and years.
And now looking back, it's one of the things that I've always done my best is when you're working with people, you just assume they're going to hurt you. But you invest like they never will.
Right.
And you take the time when they walk away, you take your 1 or 2 days to recover. And then you get back out there, and you don't let these other people, these other ladies and girls in my life that I have strong influence in, I cannot let my personal hurt get in the way of helping them, because that just hurts them. And is it a big enough hurt to fall away? No, but it's a hurt a lot of people have used. I feel unheard. I feel unloved. I feel like it's two ways, like 1 minute we're good, next minute we're not. It's confusing. But as somebody who's followed that process, I just don't regret it at all. And I do not walk around feeling devastated by that. Yeah. I feel so helped. It's like bipolar opposite. And I think that's one of the things that even to this day, when I'm dealing with things, even amongst family members, or somebody hurts you, and it's like, you take some time to think about it, go to the Lord in prayer, and then go to that person. If it's still bothering you weeks later, go to that person, because it's the only way. It might not even solve it, but it's the only way you're going to find peace and the ability
that's the first step. You won't know until you take the first step.
Exactly. And then if it gets to the point where you need to move on, you can do it with a clean conscience that you did everything you were supposed to, and you can leave with the bridges still there.
Not just that, but you learning how to deal with the hurt helped you to help others. Yeah. And I think what we have today is, it's been said, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. And that's true, but I don't think that statement is used to focus on the right thing. Right. It's often used to focus on the fact people are hurt, don't hurt them. Right. But it really, what it's saying truly is, when you don't learn how to get over that hurt and you continually are bitter and you're always hurt, you go around hurting every other person around you. If you learn how to deal with it properly, then you can turn around and help others. Matthew 5:44 comes to mind. But I say unto you, this is the Lord speaking, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. You want to help people that are hurt? This is how you do it. They have to learn to love those who hurt them, get over that hurt, get that peace, and they can turn around and help
think
others.
You younger Christians that are listening to this, and maybe you're in Bible college or maybe you're in upper years of high school and you're learning to deal with hurt, please remember this. The best people to learn from are people that have been faithful for 30, 40 years in that they haven't gone from church to church, church to church. They have grown up through the Independent Baptist movement, and they have survived, but not just survived. They've learned to thrive, and they're good Christians, because that's your hope that they're actually able to function through their hurt, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to fall. And everybody that I've ever met that has torn up their parents, their preachers, the IFB, are people who have gotten around other people who have been dropouts. What do you call them?
Spiritual clunkers.
Spiritual clunkers. And that's why you become a spiritual clunker, because you're hanging out with that person. I want to learn from somebody who has been faithful.
Right. I think Brother, I don't know how to say his last name, Brother Steve.
Yeah.
He put out 2 Corinthians 1:4, who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. Okay, it must be of the Lord that he put that on here, because that same lady, I worked hard to get close to her, and I got as close as I was ever going to get. But one of the things she did for me is she asked me, what are some verses that help you when you feel frustrated? Because I got frustrated a lot. And this was a set of verses that I had read, all of 2 Corinthians, that really spoke to me. And I told her that, and she gave me a printout with those verses on them. And I just think it is so true. In order to get comfort yourself, you have to give it. And it's the same with most things in life. If you want the good things in life, then you give. You be a giver. You use your eyeballs and look at everybody else and say, how can I help them? How can I be the blessing? And at the end of the day, when you go home, even if you have nothing, that feeling of giving back and fulfilling somebody else's need, that's worth it. That just, it heals all the hurt. It is the healing balm of Gilead.
Amen. Pete, grew up in missions, on the mission field. Guess not a lot of relationships there because they speak Japanese, and you spoke English, but I would have to imagine there were times misunderstandings between brothers and sisters or mom and dad.
It's just inter-family, normal troubles and stuff like that. So honestly, it's just nothing major, nothing really sticks out in my mind as far as I had a, well, what is normal growing up when you have no other perspective on what it, so I had a perfectly normal.
It wasn't until you got married into our family that you were abused.
No, it wasn't until I came back to the States and found out how much I was missing.
Oh, right.
I was abused.
Now I know. I'm going to be bitter now.
That's exactly how
the rest of my life.
It's not even funny.
That's
Got yourself an education.
Well, it's just being in a different culture, growing up like that. You already knew everything was different. So there's really no I mean, I can remember growing up as a kid, basically the worst things that went on was that me and my youngest brother, Joe, were always butt heads, almost literally. Actually, literally quite often.
Did you say your butt heads?
Space between the two. So
punctuation.
No, there's no punctuation. There's
I'm sorry, did I just hurt you?
We would.
Yes.
Yeah, would.
I'm bitter.
Anyway.
But as far as that, you just need to learn that you got to move on. I mean, and again, if you are someone who's going to remember a small incident for, it's like I'm 35 5 right now, and I was like, when I was 7.
When I was a young warthog.
Yes. I remember when my brother stole my action figure, and he tore it apart and buried it in the yard in 7 different locations and made me hunt for it. Oh, that never happened, actually.
That explains
Now,
a lot.
I will say something that one time, and I don't know if my sister Teresa, she had a doll that once we were playing with, and I had firecrackers.
Oh no!
And I blew a hole in its leg.
She
Still reminded me of it like a few years ago. I was like,
so
She's still bitter about that.
so bitter.
You're so upset. Have you blown the leg off of any real people? Because they say if you abuse when you're young,
You're just acting out like what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I do love fireworks.
yeah, you do.
Pyrotechnics.
You're in charge of fireworks stands every year, so
Yeah, but I don't set them off for a reason.
yeah,
Things would die.
you don't like the pain.
I'd like to retain my hearing for as long as possible.
What's that?
What?
JT, you're an only child. How abused were you?
Oh, let me tell you, I have a list.
Your
No,
dad's
I'm just
listening.
kidding. Speaking of 7-year-olds, when I was in first grade, my first grade
Best
teacher,
3 years of his life. Couldn't help it.
No, I was sitting there and I'm like, I haven't had any hurt. And then I got to thinking about it and the difference between the hurt that I received is just like David was talking about, and we'll mention a little bit, but be not overcome of, sorry, I have an echo. I can't take that. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.
Good, yeah.
And that's so important because I can sit there and I can be bitter at Mrs. Kiner because she gave me 3 tallies when I was in first grade for one thing, and I didn't
You probably
get
did.
over it, man. Like, seriously.
All the times you should have got him and you didn't.
Well, I mean, yes, but I'm just saying, as a first grader, you have to get over that. And there are people that are bitter about things that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's like,
Are you still?
There's a word for that. The word is immature.
Yes.
Because the truth is, it's what it is. It's this first grade hurt.
Right.
Is what it is. So and so did this to me, and it's like, just like you would look at a first grade and be like, grow up. It's
yeah, that's exactly right.
gonna happen.
So, but as a teenager, there was something that happened between my youth pastor and I, and honestly, it's not that big of a deal. But at the time, I really struggled with it, and it was a youth activity. We had been playing basketball, and you guys know when I play basketball,
Oh, you checked it.
I play
contact
basketball.
Did he break your arm?
So we come back up for preaching, and I am just drenched in sweat, okay? And including armpits. And he's like, dude, what, are you not wearing deodorant, man? And, I was so hurt about that. But you know what? At a bare minimum,
Sounds like
Were you
bastard.
not
He's
wearing
embarrassed.
deodorant?
It sounds like-
no, I was. And that's why I was offended. And he said it in front of everyone. Okay?
There's the heart of the problem right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anyways.
Inexcusable.
You need to give that guy a call after the show.
Yeah. Tell him you heard.
Well,
him.
the thing is I really, that I was like 17. That was 13 years ago. I don't care anymore. At the
Right.
time, I really cared. But at the time, something that my parents always told me, especially mom, she would always get on me because I was the oddball, was learn from it. And when you are a leader, if
Don't
what
do
they
that.
did was truly wrong, don't repeat it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
for your
learn
mom.
from that.
That is
That's
another
it.
perspective that does need to be flipped completely on the opposite side. People have a hard time with this in the day and age we live in, and how much more important it is us as Christians to walk circumspect, to be wise with our words, because we can point to all these things and try to teach people, and it's 100% true. But you just have to learn to, hey, that you say something just off the cuff, just something like that, you can hurt people for years to come. And it's obviously, they got to learn to get over it sometimes, and you got to teach them. But I'm just saying, from the personal perspective of hurting other people, you have to keep that in mind.
And
You have to have
understanding the
forgiveness as big as your nose. in order to do
Yes. Oh man, now I'm gonna start a new Twitter account. I'm bitter.
In a podcast.
In a podcast.
Good one, Dad.
Call it the nosy podcast.
Yeah, that's good.
So one of the perspective I wanted to throw out there, not that we haven't gone long enough, but is the fact that a lot of people who haven't been hurt act like they've been hurt because they've taken on somebody else's hurt.
Yeah.
And
That
how
is very true.
dangerous that is to jump on these mini bandwagons. I mean, within the church, it's like the Sunday school teacher called so-and-so out. You're not even in that class, but because you found out about it, you're all hot and bothered. Like, how dare they? That's crossing the line.
Yeah. And let me say this on that note. Where does this end? And why is this a big deal? And why do we need to do a broadcast about it in the IFB? Here's where it goes. You know, the bitterness thing is a root that goes down deep, and when it comes up, it defiles many. I know that we have been attacked. Somebody has built their podcast, the first episode off of me, and that was him leaving the IFB movement. Grew up IFB, haircuts, ties, all that stuff, King James Bible. Left the IFB, went to the non-denominational crowd, you know, and found
So
and then,
much better.
and then they let him down. So then he just stopped going to church. And then about a year ago, he came out and did a podcast on how he's not a Christian anymore. He doesn't.
God let him down.
Yeah. And so he goes from being wise to being a fool, for a fool is said in his heart.
There is no God.
And so that's where it goes. And that's why you have to guard your own heart. You have to guard it with everything you have, because people are human. They are sinners. God is perfect. And if you ditch God because of people, you're an idiot.
Yep. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." That's my life verse, always since I was 17, because it's one of the things I've always struggled with. When you're a passionate person, you also feel passionately when people hurt you, and you can take it personal. But if you guard your heart, you know, it protects you from having issues.
And I think it's the same chapter where it says, "My son, give me thine heart." I think it might not be.
Yeah.
But the truth is, how do we keep it? Keep it doesn't mean you hold it back from
No, you
everybody.
give it to
You're imperfect. You're a sinner. You're not gonna be able to guard your heart. You give it to God, and that's what the walk with God comes. You give God, my son, the Lord. Obviously, a lot of times we apply that to father relationship and your parents and your leadership, and that's true. But how much more so? The Heavenly Father saying to his children, "Give me your heart, because I'm the only one that can protect it."
Would you guys say, I know Jules not here, and so Pete, you really can't speak for her, but you three guys, would you say that's one of the reasons all four of you kids are still serving the Lord, is that those fundamental things of having to carry your own burden
Absolutely.
and leaving it at the cross and trusting Christ and divorcing that it's mom and dad, or it's that, you know.
Absolutely. Hands down.
I think there will always be a part of every person that can look back and may be justified in looking back and saying, this happened to me. But where the problem happens is if you hold that as the reason why you can't make the right decision.
Right.
Because people are always, you know, like we said, people are imperfect. And I think it's important to say, as we, you know, getting close to closing things down, is what Mom said towards the beginning. People are quick to attack those who will place the responsibility on the one that was hurt. Because the one that was hurt can't change the one who hurt.
Right.
You got to let it go.
You have to. Now, and the frustrating part is because they equate the emotional damage, emotional hurt with physical and sexual abuse, because they're raising that to the same level, they will look at something like this and say that we are for people being hurt, when that's not the case. We've talked about
They raise it that level so they can get a hearing. Because nobody
exactly,
else wants to
exactly. But what I'm trying to get at, what I'm trying to say is there is nobody at this table that thinks that if you're being physically abused or sexually abused, that should not be taken to the authorities immediately. We all believe that. Do it. Do it immediately. We're talking about the people who are sitting back and saying, Peter, you hurt my feelings. You said you don't like my tie. Now I'm going to go and start a podcast.
Or you said I should wear a tie.
Or you said I should wear a tie. Go live your life if it bothers you that much, but don't sit around and point at people and say, we got to take them out of, they're not qualified to be a pastor. You ain't qualified to brush
Run an ant farm.
Sure.
Qualified to make that statement.
Yeah, you're not qualified to make that
You
statement.
know,
Exactly.
I will say this, that one of the biggest attacks on our guys are the guys that are involved with helping other people's kids. And so there used to be a day, back in the day, when you had homes or something like that, and they understood that those homes were taking the place of the parent. And when you had your own kids 50 years ago, it was very common that if your kid got out of line, they get spanked. Well, nowadays, spanking is abuse. Somehow it got to that point because there's a lot of wickedness in the world and people lose their temper and kids get hurt on it's an unreasonable thing. So the cry of abuse has become it's unproportionate. It's not real. They say it's abuse, but it's not. It's discipline. It's biblical discipline.
What's
But
crazy
yet
is
the
if you had more people actually spanking their kids, you'd have less people losing their temper.
Right.
It's such an inverse thing. But
yeah. But I will say this: there is a lot of confusion with things like that physical abuse and the sexual abuse because there is no separation, there is no holiness, and if you live a holy life and a separated life, that takes a lot of character and discipline to do that. And it just doesn't reflect on the accusations that these hurt people are wanting to raise. So they make it tougher. They make it tougher to be heard and to actually put their hurt to bed.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I know we need to go on to the
Questions.
question. Go ahead.
All of those to say what you're talking about, the two differences between physical and sexual abuse. The truth is, all of the same principles still apply. If you go to the proper authorities and get that taken care of, you will never continue. If you've been abused, you will never continue in life and move forward until you apply the exact same biblical principles in your life and forgive the person that abused you.
Yeah,
Right.
because sexual abuse wraps it all up, all of it. I mean, once the abuse is taken care of, you still have to deal with the mental,
Yes, hurt's there.
the mental and physical, all
The emotional.
all the emotional.
The hurt's real.
things.
That hurt's real.
They are. It is 100% real. And I think
But
too,
you
none of
can
us are sitting.
forgive.
Absolutely, none of us are sitting here saying that on hurts that are suffered that are not sexual or whatever in nature aren't real. I think they very much are real, but how you deal with them is the only way it's gonna you're gonna feel and get any peace.
I feel like we can go on forever.
I know.
I will say this, that when we sit here and talk about hurt, I know there's a whole group of people that will listen to this and say, oh, see, the IFB, they just mark it off as nothing. That's not real. Even though we said those things are
They'll
real.
still say that, yeah.
But because the ultimate end is you're still personally responsible. That even injustice is served because you've been sexually hurt. You know, remember I said to you, instantly deal with things.
Right.
We had the whole thing with Brother Shiflett brings that thing out with that girl from the church back when there was another pastor there, all this other garbage like that. But how many years separated? She has now got how many kids? She's in a marriage. She's out of church. She's and now crying wolf. Not to say that her hurt wasn't real. Not to say that it didn't happen. Right. But look what it did to the movement because somebody decided 20 years down the road that they're going to cry wolf and cry about it because they didn't take care of it from the beginning.
Not to say it shouldn't be handled.
It should be.
It should be handled. But what we're saying is, just like anyone should sit back and look at a situation and say, how would we do this different next time?
Right.
Not next. There should be no next time. But to analyze the situation, and be like, okay, what could have been done different? Take care of it immediately.
Yeah.
Well, and I do want to
right
acknowledge
away.
that I do think there are hurts when you're a young person, and at early stages of life that you don't maybe have the maturity.
You don't process.
You don't process properly.
That's what
So
parents
I don't
and
want to
leadership
dump
are for.
exactly. I don't want to dump everything on someone who does come back 10 years later and say this happened to me because I do think
I wasn't
there's a
dumping
certain-
everything.
No, I know.
But I'm talking about leadership.
Right.
Treating it
Like
that
it
way.
happened
Right.
yesterday.
And I think that shows an imbalance.
Right.
When a leader leads a campaign and
Yes.
to address an issue and it
Because
acts
they don't
like
like how
all
it was dealt with.
all of fundamentalism. Yeah, he's personally hurt somewhere in there. And it's not, you're right. There's enough blame to go around. So when all that is worked out and said and done, when all the books are written and everything settles, where are we? Nobody's gotten any more video. Nobody's gotten money. Nobody's, the person that was accused, he's in another church somewhere else doing something else. Nothing's happened. Except we've just sat here and put a dent in independent fundamental Baptists when that's not the issue. It wasn't the independent fundamental Baptist church that did this. And that's what this whole thing's about, growing up IFB. There's no reason to blame the independent fundamental Baptist movement or any movement. We are sinners.
Right.
We're depraved.
Right.
And so you have to take on your personal depravity and deal with it.
Right.
And I think the best thing that, and something that Pastor's done is he denounces any kind of, obviously, like, this is wrong. So, any kind of issues like that in the church are wrong. They should be handled immediately. They should be taken to the proper authorities. Got instances where
He's done that.
he has done it. He has called the police and said, "Come get this girl." She says she's
Actually,
been.
we took the girl to the police.
Took the girl to the police. This girl's says she's been, and then let them take it from there. And so I think there is a real disservice done to fundamentalism to kind of whitewash everybody, and say, well, because you're not screaming as loud as I am, you obviously don't think that it's as big a deal.
Right.
And that's not
Because-
true.
That's
We
not
very much do believe that it's a big deal, but there's a right way to handle it at a right time. And I want to echo that I think that it's not, I will not be surprised if you're crucified on social media for the little discourse and talking about the principles behind how you handle something, and how these clips will go out on the internet and they'll be posted out there, not to say that
But not in
what
full
you're saying,
context of
but not in
all
the full
the
context of
conversation.
everything.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part.
You
That's
know what?
the sad part about all
I'll
this.
say this right now.
feel abused about
this won't be put out there. They'll separate it somehow.
Oh yeah.
Go to our social media platforms. Just take into consideration the 4 kids that are still serving the Lord. And that's their own choice. And Peter, you're almost 40 years old. You could leave anytime you want.
Wow.
40 years,
You jumped in a
How's
little.
that sound, buddy?
I'm giving you
5 years.
I'm giving you some maturity.
You're closer to 40 than
35
30.
years. But no one's making you tying you down. But the thing is there's a lot to be said about our ministry, and just go look at it. Come visit. But to believe the garbage that the anons, the cowards, they're cowards, and they know if their name was ever put on the account, everybody go, oh, okay, well, who are you?
Exactly.
They won't put their names on there. So that anonymity works to their benefit in a deceitful way.
Well, I think you'd be crucified by people who aren't anonymous too. So
Well,
it's just
that's those
a matter of time.
those wonderful guys that don't have a leg to stand on.
Great.
So.
We're gonna go to a song because we got to answer some questions here. Make sure that you post your questions in the chat here on YouTube, youtube.com/@Canaan Radio /live, or you can go to listen.canaanradio.com. That'll also pop up the live stream and give the chat, so you can jump in and ask us a question. The Third Degree. Right after this, we're gonna play a song. Alvin Martinez, "If I Can Help Somebody." We'll be right back. Welcome to the segment where we answer your questions, no matter how difficult they may be. Have at it. Give us the third degree. We have a question here. We're going to go ahead and ask. It was posted in the chat. Matt asks, do you agree that Eric from Preacher Boys, pastor when he was a child? So I want to make sure to say this so it's understandable. Do you agree that Eric from Preacher Boys, that his pastor, when Eric was a child, should have had a millstone hung around his neck? If he was actually taught about the free gift of salvation, he wouldn't be in this. Saying that Eric wouldn't be in this if Eric was actually taught about the free gift of salvation.
He
Go.
was.
What?
He was taught. Eric came from a background where they believed King James Bible was the inspired word of God. Now he's shifted since then. Matt, the issue is you are responsible for you. That's the end. And I believe that boy heard the gospel, whether or not he really meant business. I believe you can watch him and see he has a personality, a little bit of a snarkiness, and a big degree of snarkiness. I believe that existed back when he was a teenager. He didn't get questions answered to his level of approval, and he refused. He was rebellious when he was a kid, and he kept his rebellious streak, and he turned away from it. So I can't judge that pastor because of the fruit that came out of his
Of
ministry.
one man.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
man. There's no way you can do that. I will tell you, I can judge Eric. You'll know him by his fruit, and his fruit is just wicked. And when he came out and said he no longer was a Christian, I thought, well, at least he's starting to be honest. I don't think he ever was. And so that's my 2 cents. Anybody else got a different opinion?
I think it's difficult to look at someone who's doing what they're doing and say that they were never taught about salvation. You get into a dangerous territory there.
I think there's a lot of people that I've seen, especially on social media, who have said that when they've gone away from the independent fundamental Baptists, they've really learned how God loves them, and they will constantly point back and act like their independent Baptist church that they came from didn't teach them or model to them how much God loves them. And to me, it's the same thing. Why? Because from starting in the nursery, they were taught God is love. They were taught Jesus loves me, this I know. That is the most famous song in any church anywhere. They're taught these things. So we are responsible for the truth that we're given, even though the leadership that we have around us does fail us and is still sinful. And
It's
is
blame shifting.
Exactly.
There's just
Exactly.
no way around. There's no way around it. Not to discount or take away the hurt that people suffer, but in the end, they have been given enough truth.
They've been given Jesus.
Their own personal Bible, for goodness sake,
Right, the
folks,
Bible
read
and
the
Jesus.
thing,
Right.
and look at Jesus as your ultimate example, and stop excusing away your imperfection because others aren't. Strive, be circumspect. You be the better Christian. All solutions are in you personally striving to be a good Christian.
Right. Okay. Do we feel like that was adequately answered?
Next question.
Next question. Brother Brudnack asks, what is it like being related to a famous author like Tom Brennan?
I think Brother Redneck's in a very small world when it comes to authors.
That was a nice way of saying
That was
it. I was
good.
thinking the exact same thing.
I didn't say that Tom's not a good author. I didn't think he was famous. I don't know what world Pastor Steve's in because it's
He
not
sent
the
you
same.
He sent you some laughing
I think
emojis.
there's
Well,
a
I'm
little
not.
bit of
I wasn't.
sarcasm
I'm not.
there.
Okay, I am not criticizing.
Right.
I've got Tom's books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do I agree with everything? No. I had a conversation with my father-in-law, and he said he didn't agree with everything Tom wrote. Surprise, surprise. But we're family. And I hope Tom's very successful in all his writings. Someday he may call me and get my advice and write a really good book. But, just like, I really do want him successful. But it's just like in this family or in this church or any I have the right to believe what I believe. And if I think somebody writes something that skews the word of God or shifts it, I'm going to speak up. And I don't, people like Steve want to take my relationship with my brother-in-law and parade it around on social media to their benefit. I don't know what to tell you, but that's my brother-in-law, and I hope that he writes many more books and that his kids are all successful and that he has a wonderful marriage and that his church grows and that his bus ministry is great. If Tom decides that he wants to criticize some of the things that I believe, he's got a right to do that.
Right.
And I'm a big boy. I can put my big boy breeches on and handle it. But
It's good.
Yep.
I just don't play these games.
If I'm taking that question as not being sarcastic, which I think it was sarcastic, but let's say it's not, I've actually learned a lot from some of the stuff that Uncle Tom has written. Not stuff that I didn't know, but I've learned a lot about putting your stuff out there and being okay with that, because he does. He's done it for many years. Do I feel like he's famous? No, but I don't follow all the circles. I don't know anything.
David's the bookworm.
David is the bookworm, but I just think one time I was standing in my uncle's living room when I was probably 11 or 12, and he looked at me and he said, "Hope, why do you believe the Bible, the King James Bible, is the Word of God?" And I was like, not that I didn't believe it. It's just like nobody's just point blank asked me that. And as frustrated as I was on the moment, I did take that question to heart. And I went away and I thought about it, and so if
the next
anything,
time
he has
you will have
inspired.
an
He
answer.
inspired me. Yes, the next time he inspired me to learn to the point where I can explain to others, not just that I knew it and I understood it, but that I could explain to others. So, I mean, now he's not the sole person who inspired me to do that, but I feel like that he's contributed.
Credit where credit.
He's contributed
I will say,
a lot to
there are
that.
people in this world that just don't rub well with other people in this world.
Oh, yeah.
But when Steve answers back and says he thinks he's famous, I say, Steve, that's his social media persona. I've sat and talked with Tom, and I don't necessarily feel like we agree on everything, and sometimes his questions or his comments may seem offensive, but it may be because he's sincerely sure of what he
Right.
believes. So, although it may offend me, I have to give my brother-in-law room to have another motive than pride.
Yeah.
And same I do with Steve.
Well, you know, the
I-
interesting thing that when you're saying you have to give somebody another motive or to have the option,
Sure.
that we can't see into each other's hearts. And I think we would do well as Christians and brothers in Christ, and especially in family, if we would not so easily believe in the wrong motive, or that we would say, even if we do think people really do have the wrong motive about some things, because it's provable to us by their actions,
Sure.
that we also give them the right to grow. Not the right, but
Yes.
the opportunity, the room to grow.
Space.
Space grace. No.
Safe space.
But seriously, we're all growing, and we're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And 5 years from now, somebody who I think something is really obvious and they should just see it right now, they may come to it. And somebody else may teach them that lesson, and that, again, that all goes back to Hertz.
I will say this. He says, no, really just asking for fun. It's not fun. I don't believe that. I think you're being disingenuous. If I make a subtweet on a subject that my brother-in-law has tweeted on, it's because I'm not using his name. People might read into it, but that's the right. I have the right to do
Issues.
that.
It's
You
on
don't
issues.
have the right to reach into my world and beat my brother-in-law up or beat me up with contrary thought. It's like a third person egging on a fight. And it's clear that my brother-in-law doesn't come back. He doesn't follow me. I think my wife follows him. And that's fine. We're not bitter about that. I just,
We're adults.
we're adults. I mean, he can say what he wants. The issue is truth. And having the free will to stand and say what we want to, I have no doubt that if I were to cross... Look, I have visited him more than he has visited me. I have no problem stopping and talking with him about ministry and being at family events or vacations and stuff like that. I just don't. I don't have a problem with him. If I ever put him in a box where he feels like he can't get along with me unless he agrees with me, then I've done him wrong. If he does it to me, then he's done me wrong. But if we can both take and allow each other to have a strong stand, walk away and continue on our ministry and not be crying abused, I think we'll be okay.
That's exactly right.
So I
Good.
just think social media has allowed a lot of disingenuous conversations to take place in fun of stirring up strife.
I'm not
And
ING.
that's why we don't debate. I'm not debating people because God tells me not to. It's just the stupidest thing in the world.
There's no debate. You're right.
There
I'm
was
right.
a-
You're wrong.
Okay, next question. This is from
Jeff.
Brother Jeff. Question for Pastor.
Oh, no.
Back in the day, if things got a little physical between two men, it was sometimes good to get it done and over with and move on. Was that so wrong?
No, well, see, in an unsaved world, I grew up in an unsaved world. We're talking growing up IFB. But in the unsaved world that I lived in, it was, and my brother came home from school, junior high, beat to death. I mean, cuts, bruises, all that, because he had his boom box. Actually, it was my boom box. Took my boom box and was down breakdancing, real loud music, and these
Gangbangers.
well, they weren't gangbangers, just black kids that didn't like his music, came over and took my boom box and beat the garbage out of my brother. Well, you know what I did? I went down and beat the garbage out of the first guy I found in that area.
Were you here? No, doesn't matter.
So back
guy
in the day, you're in school and you have a tiff, and you got in trouble and you got sent home, or principal, you got suspended, and Dad found out you were sticking up for your mom, or you were defending something righteous. You got a attaboy on the back and an ice cream sandwich.
Kind of a pass, right?
Yeah, and you got a kind of a pass. And I think boys, when they're young, need to be taught to be tough, and because we're in a very female, highly
Feminine,
influenced, effeminate world, and so, I think I taught my boys to fight. They fought each other. They fought me.
Yeah, beat up by their sisters.
And that's why you let their sisters fight.
Right. So I think some of that has to be balanced, and you have to watch it as a parent. But I don't think it's all wrong. But let me say this: can you raise a man to be tough without that? Yes. If you can do it, and you're smart enough and wise enough, then praise the Lord, do it.
And losing your temper is not excusable. I mean, that's not being a strong man.
I'm not going to be shocked if you do it.
Right.
But no.
Right.
As when you're a man, that needs, like when I did what I did, that's inexcusable. There's no justification for it. Even if my brother-in-law deserved it, that does not take away my obligation today to say how wrong I was to do it.
99.9% of the time, you can get out of those situations wisely without beating the tar out of each other.
Helpful tip for parents, I think, was really good for us kids, is we did have family WrestleMania. And I mean, not when I was a teenager, but when we were
But there were
younger.
boundaries.
And there were boundaries. And then your parents were there. I mean, there were at points when, you got a
mad.
good hit in, you're going to be mad about that. And it's retaliation. And so, but doing it with your father standing there, able to break up the fight. I mean, there's no serious damage, no big bruises.
Yeah, when the boys hit like this, I said, do it again till you do it right.
Do it right.
Mainly William.
David has a question.
Oh, there's a question for David.
Yeah.
Question for David. This is from Gabe. What helped the most that you learned from Commonwealth Baptist College?
Maybe how to correctly word a sentence.
Grammar, maybe.
That was just wrong.
I'm messing with you, Dave. I love you, buddy. No, I'm messing with you. That's social media talk. You don't have to worry about grammar. He's driving. Yeah, there you go. I think I was a little bit different for me. I already went through 4 years at college, so there was a lot of things that were taught in class, in Brother Jorgensen's class, that were Bible doctrines that I remember going through. I think it strengthened me in those areas, just going through it again, like maybe a little bit more systematically. Those things helped me. I think that's probably the biggest thing, I would say. Learning... I will say this. I'll be a little transparent with you. I did learn to some extent that there are a decent amount of people that do believe in truth and a lot of things that I believe in that are just not willing to speak up. And whether that's because they need a champion to stand up and say it, or because they're cowards, I don't know. But I think that's something I learned. So,
That's good.
But I think it just overall, I think it just strengthened me in those areas of class, I think.
Very good.
What's the biggest thing you learned at Commonwealth?
That I learned?
Yeah.
How to get a wife.
I was going to say that, but I was refraining.
Yeah.
It's an easy one.
Yeah.
Lie.
Mom, tell me about what did I learn from
I didn't
Well,
learn
at least
how to
you
play
did that
basketball,
well.
I'll tell you that much.
I don't know if you learned, but
I did finding a wife. I did
Yes,
that
you did it well.
I did the school part well too. I did great.
Not as good as me.
Oh please, this is not
You
We don't
want to
wanna
get
hear
into
how well
that?
you did. We want to hear what you learned.
If we're talking in brass tacks, like what did I learn? Like I took a class of something I knew practically nothing about, history of music, and still know not much more, but
something.
but I did learn some in that. I think that there was a lot that I learned too. There's a lot that you learn when you're growing up at home that when you go out into the real world and you're away from home and everything that you know, that suddenly everything that you've ever been taught floods back to your brain as you look at situations and go, oh, that's why he said that. So there was a lot of practical practical times where I could apply things that I had learned at home and learned how to. I think another thing that I learned a lot, and people here will be surprised, I learned to shut up. I learned just a lot of things. You just don't need to say anything. You don't. And I think it caused a couple of things. It caused people to look at you like I had one kid ask me one time. He asked me if I was a pastor of a church. Yeah, and I've been at class for like 6 months.
Even a fool is
counted wise.
Yes, and I'm the biggest fool of the bunch.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
I know what you mean.
Keep your
You're
mouth
right.
shut.
Yeah.
People perceive you as to be somebody wise.
Yeah. There were a lot of things that I realized that I'm not here to
test judgment.
I'm here to do what a college student's supposed to do. You go to school, you do your classes. I'm not here to tell the staff how they're supposed to do it.
The freshmen, you came to college to graduate. You came to leave.
You came to college to shut up and learn.
Just get the job right. JT?
Came to leave. That's right.
Get out of here the right way. That brings us to the
conclusion. Yes. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Brook. We are so glad that you could be with us for this very long episode. What are we at? 2 hours, 31 minutes, 19 seconds. David, Pastor, Peter, Mrs. Reeves, Miss Hope, and JT up in the booth, we want to thank you for being a part of this broadcast. You can find previous episodes on YouTube and anywhere that podcasts can be listened to. We edit these down, not to cut much off of them, but just to take out any of the played songs and mess ups at the beginning of the episode. We cut all that stuff out for your own enjoyment. And you'll be able to find this broadcast in podcast form next week. Yeah, that's funny, Dad. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you joined us today on YouTube. And I was going to send it to a verse, but we don't do the verses anymore because we're not spiritual. So I'm going to send it to a song, Stand Strong, Lone Star Baptist College. And this song was requested by Gabe. Have a great night. We'll see you all next week.